You know that feeling when you wake up, and for one blissful second, everything is fine? And then the memory hits you. The thumping behind your eyes, the dry cotton mouth, the hazy, jumbled mess of the night before. Yeah, that was me, but my morning came with an extra special twist. The first thing I noticed wasn't the headache. It was the sheets. They weren't my cheap, slightly scratchy cotton ones. These were silk. The kind of silk that feels like cool water against your skin. The kind that probably cost more than my entire wardrobe. My eyes snapped open. The room was enormous. Floor-to-ceiling windows showed a view of the New York skyline that made my heart stop. This wasn't my tiny apartment in Bushwick. This was a penthouse. A ridiculous, over-the-top, only in the movies penthouse. And then I felt it. A weight. A warm, heavy arm draped possessively across my waist. I froze. My breath hitched in my throat. A tiny, terrified sound in the vast, silent room. Slowly, so slowly, I turned my head, and there he was, Damien Lancaster, even in sleep. His face was all sharp, brutal angles, a jawline that could cut glass, dark brows, lips that looked like they'd forgotten how to smile. I knew who he was. Everyone in New York did. The billionaire tycoon, the ruthless corporate raider, the man they said had ice in his veins instead of blood, and I was in his bed. Oh God. Oh no, 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 no. The last thing I remembered clearly was the hotel bar. I'd just landed a tiny, promising account for my fledgling fashion design business. I was celebrating. One drink turned into two, maybe three. I was staying in this very hotel, on a corporate discount I'd begged for. I must have gotten on the wrong elevator, walked to the wrong door. Panic, cold and sharp, surged through me. I had to get out, now. I tried to gently lift his arm. It was like moving a marble statue, solid, unyielding, and then he stirred. A low, guttural sound rumbled in his chest. My own heart was hammering against my ribs so hard I was sure it would wake him up. His eyes, a cold, stormy gray, snapped open, and they locked directly onto mine. The silence that followed was the most suffocating, terrifying sound I'd ever heard. His gaze didn't flicker with confusion. It didn't soften with sleep. It just hardened, like steel cooling in a forge. It traveled down from my eyes, to the sheet I was clutching, to my bare chest, to the exposed skin of my shoulder, and then back to my face. His expression was pure, undiluted. Frost. What? He said, his voice a low, dangerous growl that vibrated right through me. The hell are you doing here? My mouth went completely dry. I don't know, I stammered, the words tripping over each other. I don't remember. I think I made a mistake. You don't remember. His voice was dangerously soft, laced with something far more menacing than the growl. He sat up, and oh God, he was shirtless, all carved muscle and power and intimidating perfection. He swung his legs out of the bed, standing to his full, imposing height, looking down at me like I was a bug he was about to crush. You expect me to believe that? He asked, taking a slow, calculated step toward the bed. You just accidentally ended up in my bed? I flinched. No, I was at the bar. I had a drink. I must have walked into the wrong room. His laugh was a short, cold, humorless sound. How convenient. He was looming over me now. Let me guess. The next part of this little act involves tears? A plea for discretion? A nicely sized settlement to make this all go away? Humiliation burned through the panic. How dare he? I wasn't some scheming socialite. I was Ava Sinclair. I worked 3 jobs to put myself through design school. I sewed my own samples until my fingers bled. I was nobody's gold digger. My own anger, hot and bright, flared. I don't want anything from you. I spat, my voice trembling but clear. Not your money, not your attention, and definitely not this. For a fraction of a second, his gaze flickered, as if he saw the genuine fury in my eyes. But the wall slammed back down just as fast. You expect me to believe that? He repeated, cold and flat. I don't care what you believe, I snapped. I just want to get out of here. I yanked the sheet with me, scrambling out of the bed, grabbing my crumpled dress from the floor. My hands were shaking so badly, I could barely pull it on. I fumbled for the doorknob, desperate to escape. I don't like games, Ava. I froze. My blood ran cold. He knew my name. Slowly, I turned back. He was leaning against the bedpost, arms crossed, watching me with a dark, terrifying amusement. That's right, he said softly. I know exactly who you are. he took a step closer. You think you just ended up here by accident? Then tell me, why did you check into my hotel under a fake name? The world tilted. Fake name? Hotel records? None of this made any sense. I breathed, shaking my head, but he was already there, right in front of me. His fingers brushed my jaw, tilting my chin up, forcing me to look into those cold, knowing eyes. Careful, Ava, he murmured, his voice a silken threat. You might not like what you find out. And in that moment, I knew. This wasn't a mistake. This was the beginning of something. And I was way over my head. I spent the next 24 hours in a complete daze. I hid in my apartment, jumping at every sound, my mind racing. Damien Lancaster's words echoed in my head. A fake name. You might not like what you find out. What did that mean? Was it even true? Or was it just another one of his power plays, a way to keep me off balance? I got my answer the next morning. My phone blew up. Texts from friends, DMs from people I hadn't spoken to in years, missed calls from numbers I didn't recognize. My stomach sank. With trembling fingers, I opened a gossip site, and there I was, plastered across the front page. A blurry but unmistakable photo of me leaving Damien's hotel. My hair was a mess. My clothes were the same wrinkled dress from the night before. My face pale and anxious. The headline screamed, WHO is the billionaire's mystery girl. I scrolled down, my heart pounding. The comments were a sea of pure venom. Another nobody trying to trap a billionaire. Look at her. She's so desperate. She accidentally ended up in his bed on purpose. Classic. She's not even that pretty. He could do way better. Tears of hot, humiliated anger pricked my eyes. They didn't know me. They didn't know anything. But they'd already tried and convicted me. I was Ava Sinclair, gold digger, a scheming social climber. And the worst part, tonight was the biggest night of my professional life. The charity fashion gala. My designs were going to be showcased on the runway. It was my one chance to impress the investors, the editors, the people who could actually change my life. Now, I'd be walking into a lion's den of people who had already read the headlines. People who would whisper and point and laugh. For a second, I considered not going. I could just hide forever. But then I heard my mom's voice in my head, clear as day. You weren't born to be small, Ava. Show them who you are. So I put on my best dress, a simple black gown I'd designed and sewn myself, and I walked straight into the fire. The moment I stepped into the grand ballroom, I felt the stares, the hushed whispers, the smirks. I held my head high, my confidence a fragile shell. I could get through this. My work would speak for itself, and for a little while it did. The models were getting ready. My gowns, delicate pieces inspired by morning frost, hung in the dressing room. I allowed myself a sliver of hope. Then the music started. The first model stepped onto the runway. A gasp rippled through the crowd. My beautiful, silver-threaded gown was slashed, torn from the shoulder down to the hip. A deliberate, vicious act of sabotage. The model faltered, her eyes wide with panic. Laughter trickled through the audience. I heard a woman nearby whisper, loud enough for me to hear, "Guess sleeping with a billionaire doesn't give you talent." My face burned. Then the next model came out, another ruined dress, and another. One by one, my entire collection, my heart, my soul, my future was destroyed in front of the most powerful people in fashion. I stood there, paralyzed, watching my dream die. The room started to spin. The laughter, the whispers, they all blurred into a roaring in my ears. And then, a voice cut through the noise, commanding, dangerous, absolute. That's enough. The entire room froze, standing at the entrance, in a perfectly tailored black suit that seemed to drink the light from the room, was Damien Lancaster. You could have heard a pin drop. People moved aside like the Red Sea, clearing a path for him. His eyes were locked on me as he strode across the room, a predator on the hunt. My heart was in my throat. What was he doing here? He didn't even look at the ruined dresses on the runway. He walked right up to me. And then, in front of everyone, he did the unthinkable. He reached for my hand and pulled me firmly against his side. His grip was unshakable. I was too stunned to resist. Then he turned to face the press, a ruthless, charming smirk on his face, the same one I was sure he used to terrify CEOs in boardrooms. "Since the world is so interested in Ava," he said, his voice projecting through the silent room, "let's make things clear." He paused, letting the anticipation build. The cameras went wild. She's not some woman I spent the night with. Another pause. My breath caught. She's my fiancée. The room exploded. Gasps, shouts, the frantic flashing of cameras. My entire body locked up. Fiancée? Was he insane? His grip on my waist tightened, a silent warning. He leaned in, his lips brushing my ear, and whispered words only I could hear. Play along, Ava, he murmured, his voice like ice. Or you won't survive this. And just like that, with one sentence, he rewrote my entire story. I was no longer the gold digger. I was Damien Lancaster's future wife. The cage door had just slammed shut. The second the ballroom doors closed behind us, I ripped myself out of his grip. What the hell was that? I hissed, my voice shaking with a mixture of rage and pure adrenaline. Lower your voice, he said, his expression unmoved. Screw you. You just told the entire world we're engaged. Are you out of your mind? I just saved your life, Ava. I let out a bitter laugh. Oh, really? Because from where I'm standing, you just bought me. Like a new car, or a company you want to tear apart. He took a slow, calculated step forward, and I instinctively moved back, hitting the wall. He loomed over me. Think, Ava, what would have happened if I hadn't stepped in tonight? Your career was already ashes. The scandal would have followed you forever. You'd be unhireable, untouchable. Now? He gestured vaguely toward the ballroom. Now you're Damien Lancaster's fiancée. No one will dare sabotage you again. No one will laugh at you. You're protected. You manipulated that entire situation. You're welcome. I wanted to slap the smirk right off his face. Fine, you did your part. Now go tell them you were lying. That it was a joke. No, the single word was flat. Final. My blood ran cold. What do you mean, no? I have a proposal for you, he said smoothly. You go along with this engagement. In return, I'll make sure your name is cleared. Your brand is not only saved but launched into the stratosphere. You'll have funding, connections, everything you've ever wanted. And if I refuse? His eyes turned glacial. Then I'll stand back and watch you crash and burn. And I assure you, the fall will be spectacular. You're blackmailing me, I whispered, the realization a cold knot in my stomach. I'm giving you a choice. Why? I demanded. Why are you doing this? For the first time, something flickered in his eyes. Something dark and unreadable. I have my reasons. He wasn't just doing this to save me. There was something in it for him. Something big. How long? I asked, my voice barely a whisper. His smirk was pure sin. 6 months. 6 months. Half a year of pretending to be engaged to the most terrifying man I'd ever met. Half a year of living a lie. But the truth was, I had no choice. If I walked away now, I had nothing. I took a deep, shuddering breath and looked the devil right in the eyes. Fine, I said, my voice steady despite the storm inside me. You have a deal. My new life was a gilded cage. I moved into Damien's penthouse, a cold, beautiful museum of a home. I had a wardrobe full of clothes I hadn't chosen, a schedule packed with events I didn't want to attend, and a fiancé who was more of a CEO than a partner. I was his project, his pawn, and he was teaching me how to play the game. It started with backstabbing socialites, women with sharp smiles and even sharper claws who'd accidentally mentioned Damien's past fiancé. Yes, women who had, apparently, vanished before making it down the aisle. I learned to hold my own, to parry their insults with a sweet smile and a sharper wit. Then came the business meetings. Damien would take me to stuffy, male-dominated rooms where billion-dollar deals were made over glasses of whiskey. At first, I was just arm candy. But one night, he pushed me into the deep end, introducing me to a real estate mogul as his fiancé, the designer. The man had looked at me like I was a piece of furniture. But I remembered my research. I straightened my shoulders, looked him in the eye, and started talking about his new luxury hotel chain in Paris, and how my upcoming collection was inspired by French architecture. His dismissive expression vanished, replaced by genuine interest. I'd held my own. And when I glanced at Damien, I could have sworn I saw a flicker of respect in his eyes. The longer I spent with him, the more I saw the cracks in his icy exterior. The man was never alone, yet he was profoundly lonely. One night, on his balcony overlooking the city, I found the courage to ask him, "You hate this, don't you?" He didn't answer at first, just sipped his whiskey. Hate is a strong word, but not an inaccurate one. He finally looked at me, and for a fleeting second, the mask slipped. "This is the life I built," he said, and there was a hollow note in his voice I'd never heard before. But is it the one you wanted? For a moment, just a moment, he looked lost, like a little boy who'd been chasing something his whole life, only to realize he'd been running in the wrong direction. Then the shutters came down, and the moment was gone. But I'd seen it, and it changed everything. The feeling started as a prickle on the back of my neck. The sensation of being watched. I dismissed it at first. Of course people were watching me. I was in the papers every week. But then the gifts started arriving. A single dead black rose delivered to the penthouse. A note slipped under my door. Be careful who you trust. A shadowy figure outside a restaurant. Gone before security could blink. Then, the text message from a blocked number. I know what you're hiding. My blood ran cold. I wasn't hiding anything. But Damien was. And someone else knew it. The pressure was getting to me. At a high-profile gala, the lights, the perfumes, the stress, it all became too much. The room started to spin, the voices blurred into a roar, and the world went black. I woke up in a hospital bed. Bright lights, the beep of a monitor. Damien was there, standing by the window, his face an unreadable mask. The doctor was kind, but blunt. You fainted. Stress, dehydration, and fatigue. He hesitated, glancing at a chart. It's common in the first trimester. I froze. What? You're pregnant, Miss Sinclair. About 6 weeks along. The world stopped. Pregnant, with Damien's child. My hands flew to my stomach. I looked at Damien, waiting for the fury, the cold accusation, the assumption that this was another trap, but his expression didn't change. He just looked, as if he'd been expecting it. The doctor left us alone. The silence was deafening. Damien, I started, my voice trembling. I know, he said quietly. You know? He didn't get a chance to answer. His phone buzzed. He stepped out into the hall to take the call. My heart was pounding. He knew. How? I strained to hear his low voice through the door. Yes, I know. I suspected. I don't care what she decides. I'll handle it. I'll handle it. The words were like a physical blow. Cold, detached. He knew about the baby, and he'd already made a decision without me. He was handling it. When he walked back in, I was standing, fueled by a white-hot rage. You knew, I spat. And you were going to handle it? What does that mean, Damien? Were you going to handle me? Handle our baby? Ava, it's not what you think, save it. I shot back, tears of betrayal finally spilling over. This isn't one of your business deals. This is a life, my life, and you don't get to control it. I saw something fracture in his eyes then, not anger, fear. Ava, you don't understand. The reason I need to protect you. He ran a hand through his hair, a rare gesture of agitation. My first fiancée, Celeste. She was murdered. The word hung in the air, heavy and horrific. What? I breathed. And my mother. She only survived because I sent her into hiding. Someone has been targeting the women I care about for years. His voice dropped to a desperate whisper. And now they're targeting you. Because of me. The texts, the rose. It's them. And now that you're carrying my child. He didn't finish the sentence. He didn't need to. The anger drained out of me, replaced by a cold, terrifying dread. This wasn't about control. It was about survival. Who? I whispered. His jaw tightened. I think it's my stepbrother, Elias. He's always wanted the company. He wants to destroy me completely. And what better way, he said, his gaze dropping to my stomach, than to take away my future. The game had just changed. And it was no longer about our fake engagement. It was about life and death. Knowing the enemy's name didn't make me feel safer. It made everything more terrifying. Elias Lancaster wasn't a shadow anymore. He was a real person, with a face and a motive. And he wanted my child. Damien went on the offensive. He was a storm of controlled fury, mobilizing his legal team, freezing Elias's assets, cutting off his business avenues. We make him desperate, Damien explained, his eyes cold. And desperate men make mistakes. I tried to be strong. I tried to believe that Damien, with all his power and resources, could protect us. But the fear was a constant, cold companion. The message came late at night. A text from Damien's number. I have proof it's Elias. Meet me in the garage. Now, don't tell anyone. It felt off. Why wouldn't he just call? Why the secrecy? But the chance to end this, to finally have proof, was too tempting. I was so tired of being afraid. I slipped out of the penthouse and took the elevator down to the private garage. It was poorly lit and silent. "Damien?" I called out, my voice echoing. A figure stepped out from behind a concrete pillar. But it wasn't Damien. It was Elias. He smiled, but it didn't reach his eyes. "Hello, Ava." I turned to run, but a second man grabbed me from behind. A cold, sharp prick stung my neck. The world swam, blurred, and then faded to black. I woke up tied to a chair in a damp, dark room that smelled of rust and concrete. Panic surged, but I forced it down. "Think, Ava. Breathe." Elias paced in front of me. "Comfortable?" he asked, his voice dripping with false charm. "Damien will find me," I said, trying to sound braver than I felt. "Oh, I'm counting on it," he chuckled. "He'll be desperate. And when he's desperate, he gets reckless. He'll do something irreversible. And when he does, I'll own him. And the company." He leaned in close. "But let me tell you a secret about my dear brother. You think he's your protector? He let his first fiancée die. He considered her a weakness. And he'll do the same to you." His words were poison, seeping into my doubts. Did he know about the baby? Would Damien really choose his empire over us? I refused to believe it. I had to get out. I remembered the small, sharp seam ripper I always kept tucked in a hidden pocket of my dress, a habit from my design days. I started working my wrists against the ropes, the tiny metal point digging into my skin. Suddenly, a massive boom shook the building. The lights flickered. Elias's smile vanished. The door exploded off its hinges, standing in the smoke and debris, his eyes wild with a fury I had never seen before. Was Damien. What followed wasn't a fight. It was an annihilation. Damien moved with a deadly, brutal precision I didn't know he possessed. He wasn't the cool, calculating billionaire. He was a force of nature, a man unleashed. He disarmed Elias's men with terrifying efficiency, his focus absolute. He found me, cutting my bonds with a swift, sure motion. "Did he hurt you?" he demanded, his voice rough with an emotion I couldn't name. I just shook my head, speechless. He pulled me into his arms, holding me so tightly I could barely breathe. "I thought I lost you," he whispered into my hair, and his voice broke. Actually broke. Then he turned to Elias, who was scrambling backward, his confidence finally shattered. The two brothers faced each other for the last time. "It's over, Elias," Damien said, his voice cold and flat. "You started a war, brother," Elias spat. "You'll never be free of this." "I don't want to be free of it," Damien said. "I want to end it." And he did. The authorities took Elias away. The threat was over. We were safe. Weeks later, the world watched as Damien Lancaster, the man who never showed emotion, knelt on one knee in the middle of a public garden. The cameras were rolling. The crowd was holding its breath. He opened a velvet box. The diamond inside was obscenely large, glittering under the lights. "Ava Sinclair," he said, his voice clear and strong. "I don't do love, but for you, I would burn the world down. Marry me." For real. It was everything a woman could supposedly want. Power, devotion, security. The ultimate fantasy. But as I looked at him, I didn't see the man I'd started to fall for in those quiet moments on the balcony. I saw the man who had annihilated his own brother without a second thought. I saw the obsession, the need to own, to control. He saw my hesitation. His eyes darkened. "You were never meant to be a choice, Ava. You were meant to be mine." And that was the problem. Love isn't about ownership. It's about partnership. It's about choice. I looked at the ring, then at the man kneeling before me, offering me a gilded cage for the rest of my life. I reached out, but I didn't take the ring. I closed the box. The crowd gasped. "I don't belong to you, Damien," I said softly, my voice steady. "And I never will." I saw the shock in his eyes, followed by a storm of disbelief and fury. "You already do," he murmured, a dangerous promise in his tone. "You just don't realize it yet." But I did realize it. And I realized I had to break free. "Goodbye, Damien." I turned, and I walked away. I walked away from the power, the money, the security. I walked away from the man whose love felt too much like possession. It was the hardest thing I've ever done, because a part of me will always love him. But some loves are like fire, beautiful to look at, but too dangerous to hold. I chose to walk away whole, rather than stay and be slowly owned, piece by piece. And as I disappeared into the city, I knew one thing for certain. Our story wasn't over. Because obsessions like his, they never truly end. If you enjoyed this story of dangerous love and impossible choices, make sure to subscribe to the channel and hit the notification bell so you never miss a new romance audiobook. Your support means the world. See you in the next story.